the father of the bride got the microphone, and he said he had a little something special to show everybody. And so what did he do? He handed the microphone over to the best man, went inside the house, came back out with a shotgun, a double barrel shotgun, and he fired the gun without any
Oh,
warning. Now, for those of us not familiar with the sound of a double barrel shotgun going off, it was a loud, terrifying moment. Ooh.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wedding Pros Unplugged. I'm Kim Chapman Dionne of Kim Chapman Photography.
and I am Misty Coolidge of Coolidge Family Farm, Coolidge Chapel, and Maine Mixologists.
And today we have the one and only Dave Dionne, who's been a wedding DJ, seems like forever.
Pretty close.
Please tell everyone how you got started and what's your experience before you became a wedding DJ and all that jazz.
It all started in Gorham, Maine, University of Southern Maine. Back then it was called the UMPG.
Wow.
And being from Lewiston, I showed up there in Gorham in August of 1975 with my Volkswagen bus. My strict Catholic parents wouldn't give me a dime to operate that Volkswagen. So I desperately went looking for a work-study job at the business office there in Gorham. They directed me to WMPG Radio, which was looking for a play-by-play announcer for basketball and hockey games. And that's where it all got kicked off. I got on the radio, and I had back in the old days, in the 70s, you had to have something called a radio telephone third-class license to be on the air.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, my father had taken me to Boston the year before, and I had gotten my license. So I was ready to go. I was on the radio, and I was doing play-by-play sports, and also had various air shifts where I was acting like an idiot and trying to be comical. I was kind of copying a combination of Monty Python, Benny Hill, Johnny Carson, George Carlin.
You're aging yourself, Dave.
I know. No, and I am. So, but that's what I was doing. I was a big hit on the radio, and I was heard by the guy that ran a big commercial radio station in Portland, WJBQ. A guy by the name of Jeff Ryder heard me and got through to me there at the radio station. And next thing I know, I was on commercial radio as an 18-year-old, working from midnight to 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And, yeah, from there, radio just kicked in, and eventually, January 14th, 1977, I was the DJ at a wedding.
I was 2.
Oh, I was going to ask if you were born.
I was a little older than 2, but not much.
Yep. So it was a long time ago, 49 years. It'll be 50 years as a radio disc jockey this August, coming up here in 2025. So that's what I've done.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that background, Dave. That is super cool. I love learning new things about all of these wedding pros
I
that
do
we
too.
know.
Isn't
And
it fun?
Kim,
Yep.
we've been working together for a decade or so, and to learn new things about these amazing vendors is just one of the reasons why I love doing this, is because the stories we hear is just outrageous and amazing.
It really is. Everybody has a voice.
Yeah.
But
It
you did
does.
a lot of radio. Didn't you do this obnoxious Romano furniture
I
commercials and
did, yeah.
things like
Back
you
in the
did a lot?
70s, I think. Romanov Furniture and quite a few others. I've forgotten now. It's been so many decades, but I lent my voice to television commercials and radio. And Romano was probably one of the more irritating ones. Actually, I'm thinking of another one that went out of business, Dorsey Furniture. I don't
Oh,
know if you
yeah.
remember them.
Well,
Um,
I think experience and having that voice and having that timing
Timing.
down is so important. I think a lot of couples forget about that when they're thinking about, using a Bose speaker, and I can, save the $2,000 or whatever it is for DJs nowadays, and not incur that expense because we don't need that, and they don't realize
Yep.
that perfection that comes with being a DJ and having that person
Professionalism.
the professionalism, and not, you and the wedding planner are the two key people of a wedding. Like, you keep it rolling, you keep it professional, you keep guests entertained. It's a show, and I think couples forget that. So you want to go into that a little bit more, Dave?
Well, yeah, timing, that comes from being in radio, I would imagine, or doing TV and radio commercials where everything has to be 29 seconds on the button. So you have to deliver the script, you've got to deliver the words, clear as a bell, no mistakes. So when I'm at a wedding and I got to make an announcement, I make sure to read the crowd, make sure people are going to be listening. They're in a position to listen and hear. And I keep it short. I keep it crisp. Whatever needs to be said, it's got to be minimal words to get through to people that are typically not paying attention. They're involved in discussions with one another and whatever else is distracting them at the time, whether it's a drink or a piece of food or somebody else at the table. I've got to deliver a message. So I do it crisp, clear, to the point. I try not to repeat it. And I don't yell into the microphone. I deliver my voice through the microphone, through the speakers, so you can understand the words. So, and that's how I deliver it. And I got to keep my composure, keep my cool. There's a lot of weddings where when we're up to the introductions, things are pretty hectic. Things are pretty loud. People are excited. And I've got to make sure to calm things down, get people seated, get them quiet, and then deliver the goods. Here comes the voice. Here comes the people. Right. And it's not about me. It's about the bride and the groom. But I've got to deliver that voice. I've got to communicate with this group of people that they've assembled.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of DJs that there's dead silence in between formalities, or, after the speeches, there's just nothing. Dave will turn on the music and announce dinner service starting shortly or whatever. But there's just, I don't know.
That comes from being on radio. Yeah. Dead air is the end of the world. You cannot have dead air when you're on a radio station like WJBQ.
Right.
You have something ready to go. You're coming out of something, going into something. I'm the bridge to that. Same thing applies at a wedding reception. There is no need or room for dead silence or dead air. It's pretty easy to transition from making an announcement to letting people know here's what's coming up next. And music kicks in the minute my voice goes off. I've got my finger on the button with music that comes on. So there is no silence. And that's one of those little things that I do that maybe nobody would notice.
How do you handle requests? I think that's a big question.
Yeah, it depends on what the bride and groom have given me for instructions. If they've given the green light to entertain requests, and maybe half do, then I entertain the request. It depends what they're requesting. If they're requesting something opposite from what the bride and groom want for a vibe, then I've got to find some politically correct way to negate that request. And
yes,
somebody comes up and wants
the chicken dance.
Yeah, the chicken dance or the electric slide or some of the more irritating things that have lasted over the decades. It's up to me as judge and jury. Is that going to fit? Does that make sense? Is this what the bride and groom want? And I hate to upset or disappoint somebody that desperately wants their favorite song. If it doesn't make sense, my standard line is I will try to get that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of couples give DJs very bizarre playlists where, because there's a lot of older people, I think mostly older people at weddings, and they're not going to dance to this bizarre music. What do you do?
I've got to respect the playlists. If they want me to play Grateful Dead all night long because that's what they like, or the band Fish that has that certain sound, if that's what they want, I'm going to be playing that to the best of my ability. If nobody's dancing, nobody's dancing. I had that happen at Lincoln Bay a few years ago, where a guy had given me a list of his songs, and they were unusual. They were unique. It would have made more sense. I tried to talk him into letting me play that stuff during the cocktail hour and dinner, where it doesn't matter if anybody's dancing. Here are your songs.
You don't sneak in a dance song here and there?
On that night with this particular guy, after a few songs where the dance floor was reasonably dead because the songs weren't danceable, he came up to me and whispered, "Go ahead and play your songs. Play what you do." So I thought, all right, here we go. I'm going to play Uptown Funk, and we're going to have 80 people jammed onto that dance floor. And it was 2 solid hours of that towards the end of the night. So it happens sometimes. There are people that will stick with their playlist, even if it's not working. This is what they want to hear. I have to respect that, and that's what I'm going to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. You have to, like, for example, bar is a good comparison to that. Like, I get couples that want a weird signature drink.
Yep.
Pardon my dogs. And I'll be like, well, is that going to please 80% of your guests? It's about education too. You want to make them happy, but sometimes the couples don't realize that that the job you're giving them and that you want to be successful, you want the crowd to be happy, but it's a happy medium. Like you want to please the couple, you want to please the crowd. So you have to educate on what makes everybody happy while also making them happy.
Another
Exactly. Right.
another thing that I think couples don't understand is the amount of setup it is for a DJ. It depends on the venue, but there are some venues where you have to set up 4 different setups, Dave.
Yep.
Like
Yeah,
that's
I'll be doing that
insane.
coming up in a few weeks at the Hardy Farm in Freiburg, which is a beautiful property, and it's got the wooded chapel where they have the ceremony. So I have to set up a speaker system there and a laptop, wireless microphones, the various wires, electricity needs, and all that stuff. And that's just one setup in the woods for that one chunk of the day. They have a tent set up where they feed everybody, and I have to have a speaker system in there to make announcements and play music. And then they have a cocktail hour area there at the Hardy Farm outdoors,
On
the
that
one with the
patio.
propane furnace and all that stuff. So I set up a Bose speaker system there to deliver the cocktail hour music. And then I have my primary gear inside the barn
For
for whenever
dancing.
we get in there. So 4 setups all in advance. I show up about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours in advance of my start time, set up all the equipment, have it all up, running and tested, and then get changed up. And then I can go from ceremony to cocktail hour, dinner, and then dancing without tearing anything down or setting anything down. It's all ready for me. Ready to go.
Yeah, the first time I went with Dave on a gig where I was not photographing anything, so I went to we had to
Assist.
get on a boat. I don't know, Mariners Church in New Hampshire or something. I could not believe like you have to do this every wedding. In the dock, we had to get on a boat, and the tide uh going on the boat was up, but when coming back it was down. So we had to walk up that ramp with all that stuff. And also being at Sunday River at the lodge, what is the North Peak
Oh,
Lodge?
the North Peak
In the
Lodge.
middle of a snowstorm, I was helping him, and it's like I felt like I was on Mount Everest, getting up to that gondola with all this stuff, and it was a huge snowstorm, windy, cold.
Yep.
I just leave.
Yeah, DJs and
Bands
photographers and videographers have so much equipment that to haul with them,
and
lighting and
bands.
cables and
Yep.
all the things. I mean, you don't realize the equipment that you invest in that
Yep.
has to work every single time. Like having a professional to man that is so important.
Yep. And
Yep.
you better have backup equipment too. In addition to those 4 setups that I've got, in my vehicle is an extra set of speakers, an extra laptop, an extra microphone, all the key components that if I have a major failure, I better have something on site to turn to keep the ball rolling. So
Right.
What about generator? Do you have a generator just in case you lose power?
I do. I just brought one wherever Kim and I were. Let's see, we were
We were at a private home, and the
in
ceremony,
Pittsfield.
what they wanted to have it way out, but they didn't
There was no
think that
electricity.
oh well, there's no electricity, and you can't even run couldn't even run cords that far.
Yeah, so I brought a Honda 2500 watt generator. It's small. It's the kind you see in downtown New York City and Manhattan that all the vendors use when they're cooking in their little
Yeah.
mobile carts. They were all using the Honda 2000 and 2500 watt. Very quiet. So in this particular case, on that April wedding that we did, I ran a 100-foot extension cord into the woods, set up the generator in the woods with the back end of it facing away. And once I had music up and running, you couldn't hear the generator at all, but I provided my own electricity. So that comes along, especially for tented weddings. I bring
Yeah.
it as my own personal insurance policy in case whatever they had planned for electricity in the tent has any kind of problems, and problems do occur
Yeah.
with tented weddings when it comes to electricity. Either the caterer is drawing too much or the lighting within the tent is causing a buzzing sound on the speaker system. If anything
Mhm.
like that occurs, I simply switch over to my own Honda generator, provide my own power. It runs for up to 9 hours on a tank of gas. So it's a pretty cool little
Wow.
thing to have. Yep.
That's amazing. I should invest in something like that for my place, just in cases. I mean, I'm on a main road, so I rarely lose power when other people do. But there's been a couple weddings in 10 years that has happened too. Thankfully, it's been back up quickly, but yeah, I should have something like that
Yep.
available to
Honda
me.
2000-watt generator. Pretty
Nice.
inexpensive, 100%
Well,
reliable.
all DJs should have them. I can't
Yep.
count how many times I've had a DJ that has shown up. I'm sure you do site visits if you haven't been to a venue before. I have had so many DJs show up to my farm, never been there. They're like, "Oh, we need to go where?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have the ceremony set up, you have cocktail hour set up, and the barn." Like, "Oh, well, I only have one set up with me." I go, "Well, you probably should have visited the venue before,
You get what you pay
before the wedding
for.
day."
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then what about, I don't have enough extension cords with me. I'm like, well, I do have spares because I am very prepared at my venue. I have all of the backup things just in case vendors are unprepared. But if I didn't have that, he would even have power for the ceremony because
Yep.
you need to run power out there. And he didn't have a generator. So thankfully, my cottage one has an exterior outlet that I planned on for DJs that aren't prepared for that. So there's so much to think about when it comes to music.
Yeah, that's where experience really comes into play.
Do you have meetings with your couples?
Uh, it- I used to, as Kim and I call it, in the old days,
Before
pre-COVID.
COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID and well before COVID, actually, we routinely would meet with couples. We had our favorite place down by the main mall. What was the name of that bookstore that we used to go to? Borders, I
It's
think.
called Books a Million now.
Yeah, Books at Borders. It had a beautiful cafe in it, and that was the standard place to meet people, to shoot the breeze and go over the details. These days, it's not as prevalent, only because a lot of the weddings I'm doing for Gen Z or the millennials, whoever they are, this generation around, they've negated a lot of the formalities, so there's not a lot to talk about. As
Yeah.
long as I show up on time with the right equipment and the right music, the younger couples that I'm running into over the last several years are eliminating introductions. They're minimizing their first dance.
Cake
Their
cutting. They're not doing cake cutting.
cake cutting's out the window. A bouquet and garter toss is a thing of the past for the most
Yeah.
part.
Sometimes they do
So,
it.
yeah, once in a while, but for the most part, a lot of these weddings are without major formalities, which negates a lot of what I used to do.
Hmm.
But I'm still there. The equipment still has to work. The music has to play. Announcements still have to be made, but it's minimal. So there's not a lot to meet and talk about. You can do it over Zoom or over the phone just as easily as showing up in person. And for the couples that live out of state, it can be logistically difficult to find a date, time, and place to get together to go over minimal details.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think Zoom is still good though, because I think personality and getting to know your vendors is really important.
Yep.
Like with my bar clients, I Zoom with them for an hour to maybe there's a little more details as far as bar is concerned, maybe, but I love them getting to know me, sharing my history, hearing their story, what's important to them for their wedding day, just little details that I can, make it a more personable experience. So I love Zooming just for personality reasons too.
yeah, Zoom is good.
Yep.
Hey, Dave, can you tell us the most outrageous thing that has ever happened to you at a wedding? I know there are several.
I mean, that's quite a few. Yeah.
We
Oh
all
my
have
God,
stories.
you should hear.
We have
Yeah.
stories from people becoming ill at the wedding to people fighting at a wedding. The one I think you're referring to occurred up in Newry, Maine, at a private home near Sunday River, a tented wedding, with 150 people, fantastic caterer, and I think it was the Good Food Store or something like that. Um, and the father of the bride decided to pull a little stunt that he thought was going to be hilarious, that people were really going to love. And when it came time for toasting, we had two or three people give a standard toast with a wireless microphone. All was well. The father of the bride got the microphone, and he said he had a little something special to show everybody. And so what did he do? He handed the microphone over to the best man, went inside the house, came back out with a shotgun, a double-barrel shotgun, and he fired the gun without any
Oh,
warning. Now, for those of us not familiar with the sound of a double-barrel shotgun gun going off, it was a loud, terrifying moment, which had myself looking over at the photographer and anybody else that I could make eye contact with, thinking, Are we safe? Is this a joke? The guy fired the gun, and his point, grabbing the microphone, handing over the gun, was, this is my little girl. You take good care of her, and that sort of a vibe. And but the bride was crying at that point. The microphone was taken away from the father, and he left the area. The mother of the bride came to see me, saying, "Start the music, get these people distracted. Let's get going." She instructed the caterers to serve something, anything. And the entire family ushered away with the dad into the house, and they disappeared for the longest time. So this stunt, this attempt to be funny or do something like this really backfired. It scared the crap out of 150 people, including me, because I don't think I'd ever been quite that close to a shotgun being fired like that.
Wow.
So outrageous, yeah. That was a numbnut thing to do, and I
Who was
think
the
I think the photographer was a guy by the name of Skip Churchill. He's up from the
oh,
Norway, South Paris area. But I ran into him a few years ago, and we brought up this incident as something we both remembered for decades. And
Oh my
this
God, how do
happened
you,
quite a
you're
while
never
ago.
going to forget it.
Never in a million years. No way.
I mean, I think
that's
we all
crazy.
as wedding vendors have our own unique stories that
Yep.
we often share. To know how to handle those situations. Like, what do you do? Like, to be professional. Like, how do you handle? It's so hard.
You've
That was
had
a tough
several
one.
hurricanes too, haven't you?
Yep.
Or
Yep.
yeah.
I DJ'd a wedding on the night of Hurricane Gloria, 1985, I think it was. And that was at East Auburn Community Center here in Auburn, Maine, next to Lake Auburn. And the eye of the hurricane passed overhead. We had calm. We had extreme winds prior, calm for an hour, and then more winds after it was going by, and somehow maintain electricity all night long.
Wow.
So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that was a frightening event because it shuttered the building, and we had a lot of people inside that wedding reception, and we
Mm.
plowed ahead. Hurricane Gloria, whatever the exact date of that was.
Let's talk about hours. I know DJs have different sorts of hours when it comes to their window of playtime. I
Yeah.
have some DJs that love to do an hourly rate, and the couple's like, "Oh, I'm just going to hire you for 4 hours," and that DJ is not educating the couple on no receptions 4 hours.
Right.
So, how do you deal with the request for hours, and what's your typical, you know, window of time that you play?
Yep.
What's normal?
Normal and traditional and almost all the time, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. seems to be the 6 hour chunk of time that most people select. A 4 hour ceremony, I mean, a 4 o'clock ceremony, 4 hour, 4 o'clock ceremony, and then cocktail hour following, and then dinner, and eventually dancing. And usually 6 hours will do the trick. It fits pretty well. You end up with about 2.5 hours of dance time for your typical wedding with a typical amount of people between 80 and 150. That'll work. Now, when you get to weddings that have 200 plus people, 6 hours might not cut what you need
Because you
because it
need
takes
more
a lot.
time for dinner.
Yeah, a lot more time,
Hmm.
especially if it's catered, especially if it's plated. That takes a lot of time to deliver when you have 225 people. I did something similar to that at Sebago Lake with Blue Elephant Catering,
Hmm.
where we had 200 plus people. 4 to 10 were the designated times, and it was never going to work. Things ran behind, and then things got really bad. When I started playing music, like 8:30, maybe even 9 o'clock, we were going to have an hour. And about 30 minutes into the music at Sebago Lake in a tent, the state police showed up
Oh no.
with complaints from around the lake. And yeah, I was playing the music pretty loud because I had a large speaker system with a large group of people. And the state police showed up to shut it down. And we only had music running 30 to 40 minutes. And the bride and groom begged and pleaded. And he cut him a deal. He had me lower the volume, cut out the subwoofer so it wasn't thumping, and demanded that. And he stayed put. He stayed there until 10 o'clock and had us shut it off. And that was the end of that.
Hmm.
So 4 to 10, going back to the original question, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., those are the standard times. That's really
Yeah.
what works best. a 4 p.m. ceremony followed by cocktail, dinner, and dancing.
Depending on the season and sunset too, because if you're in the fall and winter, I tell my couples it's a pendulum. So
Yep.
we have to watch the sunset. So if it's getting dark by 4, you need to have a ceremony at 2:30. So
Yep.
then you're going 3 to 9. So a
Correct.
typical reception is 6 hours, but it all plays by the sunset. If you want to go till 11 in the summer, great, then you're starting at 5. If you want to go, if in the fall we got to play by the set, then you're starting earlier and ending a little earlier. So it's a pendulum.
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I
3 to
also
9 is typical too. 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. That comes up quite a bit,
Hmm.
more than ever before over the last couple of years for whatever reason. No matter what time of year, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. has become almost the replacement to the old 4 to 10.
I
Yeah,
also think
interesting.
it's important for couples to realize that sometimes they just want you for the DJ for the reception, but then they're the day before the wedding they're saying, "Well, can we just borrow your microphone for
The
the
ceremony.
ceremony?"
Yeah.
Like, but so that means Dave has to be there. They don't think of that, or the musician needs a mic,
But
and
that's where Dave or a DJ would educate the couple, say, okay, you only want me for this window, but what are you doing for the ceremony music? Do you have a microphone? Is the sound going to carry? What if the micro speaker's not working? Like I do that with my couples as of being a wedding planner. That's the other job as part of a wedding planner DJ role, is to kind of educate, like, what are you doing for the ceremony? And this is, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? I think that's where education comes into,
for sure,
Yep.
yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
Any new tips and trends that you're seeing with music nowadays?
No, no. As a wedding DJ over the last few decades, I only add maybe 3, 4, 5 songs per year to the rotation that you hear that I play to make people dance. So a 2-hour dance window, which is really, really typical, that's about 30 songs, 15 songs an hour.
Yeah.
So 30 songs don't change very much. I still play some of the biggest hits of all time, whether it's Whitney Houston or Uptown Funk or whatever. There are some songs that work every single time, every single wedding, no matter where you are, no matter what the age group breakdown is. And for a song to break into that top 30 requires extreme popularity
Like
and
that new Pink Pony song. Like you're gonna get that at every wedding now.
Or messy,
probably,
or
yeah.
I'm so
For other
messy.
hit, I find more effective though. I can't think of the name of it. Hot to Go,
What
and
is
which,
that? Never heard of that.
yeah, you have,
You have.
you have, you have.
Maybe then I'll
It's
name of it.
All
a
right.
gigantic hit. It works well. People do something like YMCA with their arms to that particular song, Hot to Go. But
Yeah.
uh,
Do you
yeah.
still play? No, I am not even going to ask that.
Oh no,
Never mind.
what YMCA? The Electric Slide?
Uh,
Cotton Eye Joe.
some people request. It's so funny because once in a while, someone will request a terrible song like the Chicken Dance, and Dave sometimes has to play it, and it makes him look like a weirdo
Yeah,
for
what are you
playing
playing
it.
that
But
for?
it's a request. If I was
Yeah.
a DJ, I'd say, "This song was requested by so and so," and
I'll do that if I feel that it's on the line. Like, ladies and
Yeah. This
gentlemen,
was a request. Yeah,
right,
that's a good
right.
idea. Yeah.
That guy
So it's
right over
not on
there.
you.
Here's
The
your
girl,
song.
the woman in the hot pink sweater requested this song.
Yep. There have been times where the last song of the night selected by the newlyweds is something that gets me a booing and hissing or thumbs down or why are you playing that? So I make sure to preface it with our newlyweds have selected this following song as the last song of the night. In other words, shifting the responsibility, blame, if you will, to them. This is
Yeah.
what they wanted to hear. And I've gotten into the habit of doing that when there is a last song that they've specified,
Yeah.
only to make sure that, if you don't like this or you think it's a terrible idea,
or he won't get booed.
yeah, no, the lights got snapped on at 10 p.m. And that's the other chunk of pressure that I tend to come under half the time is let's keep going.
Mhm.
Yes, that's
Oh,
great. And I'm
Yeah,
sure
right.
you check with your venues about, do they
sure.
allow that one more song or is it a hard shot? Because I know at my place it's a hard shot.
Yep, most places are. You've got to stop. That there's no going on. But when you're dealing with 60, 70, 80 people that have been drinking for 3, 4, 5 hours plus, sometimes that doesn't go over well. And
Hmm.
so
Right,
we
which
have to
is
find some way.
Which is why planners really, really need to stay till the end,
Correct.
um, to
Yeah.
turn the lights on or whatever you do at the end,
Fade them
because
up.
Yep.
he gets attacked at the end of the night if there's nobody
Yeah.
else there.
But usually the couples know, like either the venues told them or the planners told them that, that at you when you're sober, you're selecting that end time. So what
Yep.
do you want that to be? That's a discussion that I have with my couples. Like when
Correct.
you have no alcohol in your system, what do
Right.
you feel like is the right end time for you? That's what we're going to tell the DJ. That's what's going to be on the timeline. And I know most DJs check in with me as the planner and venue owner. Like, what if they request one more song? I'm like, nope. Because what
Right.
happens is if you give it an inch, they're gonna want three songs.
That's right.
So what time at what point do you stop? And then you're making them mad because you gave them one but didn't give them three. So you get angry guests at that point. So it's just easier to have a hard shut.
Yep. The lights need to come on. That's the magic ingredient. When the lights
Mhm.
come on, that sends that subliminal signal that, it's time to move on to the next thing. It's
Yeah.
cool down time to talk to one another and, time to
Say your
gather around
goodbyes.
stuff. And, if there's a fire to go to, a bonfire or something else, or there's more food that's being served, there needs to be some kind of a diversion or a distraction for some of these groups, especially the ones that have had too much to drink. And that still comes up from time to time. That hasn't faded with the Gen Z and millennial thing. So,
It's
It's
nice
usually
when
not the
couples
couples. It's usually
guess.
the
Yeah, the couples
correct.
know the
yes, the
rules
grooms.
usually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it when couples have shuttles because then the
right.
shuttle's here.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It really helps people get them out the door. And I tell
That's
my
a good
couples
point.
like after at the end of the night, you're gonna have your core crew, you're gonna have your wild ones that are left. Like let's shout out, let's go get in our comfies because they're usually staying on site. Let's go get our comfy clothes on. Let's pull out some games. Let's play cornhole. Let's you can move into transitioning into what's the next phase. And I do talk about that with my couples is what's happening when that DJ's done. What do you want to do? Are you going to literally go down to the cottage and go to bed? I have some couples that do that.
Yep.
And when that happens, literally everybody would go to bed because your couples are magnets. So if they're around, then everybody's going to want to make them happy and stick around. But if the couple departs, then everybody's going to dissipate
That's
naturally.
true.
Yep.
Good point.
So it's another education factor in that. I know a couple of the new trends I'm seeing as far as wedding planning and venue is number one, longer cocktail hours. I'm seeing a lot more
Yep.
like an hour, hour and a half, hour 15 minutes for cocktail hour because if they're not doing a first look, like we talked about in our podcast the other
With
day, that
Fausto.
we with Fausto that I know with it's all communication. So your DJ and your caterer need to know that it's an extended time so that they can continue and be prepared for that time as far as food, as far as you're not breaking down equipment or start disconnecting things to know that it's a longer time. I love longer cocktail hours. I think it's the best part of the day.
Yep. Yep. That has been coming up quite a bit. Cocktail
Mhm.
hours that go 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. It
Yeah,
works.
it is because you don't want to talk to people at the tables. That's the
Yep.
most annoying thing is with food in your mouth, and then you don't
Right.
get a chance to eat as the bride and groom because you're worried about getting around to talk to all your people. If you do it during cocktail hour, then you can just enjoy dinner, enjoy the formalities, enjoy the experience, and then get right into dancing. You've already talked to everybody, which I think is amazing.
Yep.
Yep. From a
And then the other
photography,
thing, yeah,
I
go
was just
ahead,
going to
Kim.
say, from a photography point of view, I don't lo cocktail hour is my least favorite time of the wedding. Um, because people are not loosened up yet, you know. They're real stiff. Some of them, a lot of them don't even know each other, and they're just standing there. It's just, um,
It's going
I
around. It's
won't
good. It's
say, and
cool
they're
to go
getting all
around and get
sweaty.
like and get all groups of pictures, people that are talking because those are groups of friends and family that are together and on the lawn. So going around and getting pictures of those little groups is cool.
Yeah, but it doesn't compare to the reception. But I
True.
mean, whatever they want.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I feel like an hour and a half is too long, unless we're doing photos in that hour and a half. But
Yeah. And then the other thing I'm seeing is instead of doing like introductions with a lot of cut brides are just doing them, just introducing the bride and groom nowadays. That's a big more of a trend. But
Yep.
then more so is that not doing the pairing. It's all of the girls come in together and then all the guys come in together, which I
Yep.
think is amazing. And I know Kim's gonna say that it's hard to photograph because I've heard her say that before. But it's just better because the awkwardness is not there anymore and it's more fun.
Yep.
And couples like, oh, we can come in all together as girls. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that is awesome.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. That started a couple of years ago,
yep.
coming in as groups. And I find it a lot simpler and easier, especially if I can use just first names. When you start getting into
Yes.
full names that have complicated last names, that can get tricky for anybody, no matter what your experience level. To try to pronounce certain names can be really hard. And if you've got multiple pairs that have to come in, that can make anybody get tripped up. But coming in as a group of girls, coming in as a group of guys, and announcing it that way is
Mhm.
pretty simple.
Is
But I
fun.
find just as often as that is just the bride and groom are
Mhm.
introduced in first names
Mhm.
only. They don't want to get
Yep.
into the last name and what it is. So I appreciate that. That makes my life real simple, real easy.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time too,
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
with a
Lining up
large
a group
party.
of 20 people, traditionally, lining up 18, 20, 24 pairs and unruly people that aren't cooperating, not listening. And then I've got to go and I've got to start up the music and I've got to get them in. I've got to get them to cooperate and make sure that they're listening for their names and come in. That was always tricky and difficult. I found that to be like the most difficult thing I would have to do as a DJ,
Mhm.
MC at a wedding was
Yep.
just the introductions, and that is pretty much eliminated.
Yep.
Mm.
And especially if that wedding doesn't have a day of coordinator, you're now taking on the role of the day of coordinator, which I
Yep.
don't know. Do you charge more for that? Because I know if I was a DJ, I would.
No, I
Um,
do not. I'm there. You've got me from 4 to 10. I'll do whatever it takes to make this successful. If I have to shift tables and chairs around with you, that's what I'm going to do. So I'll help cater food. I'll do anything I can to
that's
make it
awesome.
There,
work. So
there have been many times I've worked with Dave, and then all of a sudden we realize, I guess we're the planners because
yep,
there's nobody, there's no venue manager, there's no planner,
yep,
just the parents. They don't
And
know
that's
anything,
one
and the
really, and
caterer.
that's really one thing that as couples, you know, picking a venue that either has a venue coordinator to deal with like, fuses and venue stuff, but then also having that day of coordinator is so important.
yep,
It is
If
really
they know what they are
important.
doing.
They need, and I know a lot of venues nowadays are requiring couples to hire a day of coordinator.
right,
It's in the contract, and
yep,
it can't be Aunt Betty. It has to be a professional wedding coordinator that has insurance, that
yep,
has a contract. And you're looking at spending, 1,000 to 2,500 for a day of coordinator. 1,000 is probably an inexperienced person. Or, like Christina was saying, her base day of coordination is 3,500. I mean,
yep,
it's so worth it because you have a professional to run your day and be your buffer. If anything goes wrong, the couple should not know about it. It's between the planner and the DJ that usually have those conversations. Yeah, weddings need planners. If it's like 30 people, maybe not, but when you're talking over 50 people, you've got to have somebody manage that.
yep,
If not, it falls on the DJ. For
yep.
sure.
Which it does a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
The coordinated attack between the DJ and the caterer and the photographer, we end up having to be the de facto planners, and that's not the best way to do it, but
no.
oftentimes that's exactly where it falls.
Yeah. And wrapping up things for you with you today, I always like to ask about pricing. I know sometimes it's a conversation that it's hard to throw out there numbers, but when you're talking a professional DJ, what are you seeing for price ranges nowadays?
For the ones that really have experience, that really know what they're doing, the people that I would want to hire, 2,500 bucks seems to be the standard six
Or
hour
more.
experienced DJ. Yeah, maybe even a little more than that, but $2,500. Unfortunately, most of the inquiries that I get, people aren't looking to spend anywhere near that.
Mhm.
I think 1,500 bucks seems to be the standard ceiling that people think in their heads that they're going to get a decent DJ. And maybe that comes from the Knot or Wedding Wire or one of these other sources that I don't think is accurate, true, or real.
Mhm.
Uh, but 2,500 bucks will get you somebody pretty darn good in the state of Maine.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
someone that
agree.
will know you need four systems, someone that will
Right.
know you need a backup system, you need insurance, you have to have $1 million liability insurance
Yeah.
policy. A lot
Yeah.
Well,
of
and then
these,
it, And it falls on the couples too, that if you want to save your pennies, and that's fine. Weddings, there's a budget for everybody. Like Christina was saying, that everybody has a budget,
Yep.
whether whatever size that is. But if you only want to spend, 1,500 on a DJ, ask the questions. Do you have the equipment for a setup? Do you have a generator? Do you have a wireless microphone? Those are things you need. So if
Right.
to not have them, then maybe you want to look into another DJ.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, and Dave has other DJs, other less expensive DJs, but they have Dave to make sure, okay, you've got the setups, you have the insurance, this and that.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah. And we're carrying a $2 million liability policy now because there's one or two places up in Bar Harbor that now require $2 million bucks.
Mhm.
And they're corporate owned, big giant corporations. I believe the Bar Harbor the Bar Harbor Club is the one that has a $2 million requirement. So that's a first. I've never run across anybody else from the Harrisseekit Inn to the Spruce Point Inn, some of these other Kennebunkport. $1 million bucks does the trick. But if the trend continues the way the Bar Harbor people are going, we may be having to up that liability policy up to $2 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on, Dave, before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered it all. Music, experience, where it all started, where it's all going. And
Love
that
it.
Kim and I met at a wedding.
Thank you, Dave, for being here. You're an amazing DJ. I've worked with you many, many times. Your flow is impeccable. You know what you're doing. Your voice on the microphone is always crystal. You're just professional in every
velvet.
single
He has a
way.
velvety voice.
And that
Velvet
comes from
voice.
being on the radio. I think that's
That's
a
right.
really key
Yep.
factor in doing and being that way. I know there's a couple of DJs that come to my place and they have radio experience, and you can tell because
Yep.
their voice is just like on it. They're so great.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, well, thank you all for being here. I am Misty Coolidge, Coolidge Family Farm, Coolidge Chapel, and Maine mixologist.
I'm Kim Chapman Dionne, Kim Chapman Photography, and thank you very much to Dave.
Dave Dionne.
Who are you? Who are you?
I just a guy from Lewiston that had a really nice voice.
All right. Thanks
Dionne
all.
Entertainment.
You got it.